Am I boring anybody to death yet? It's okay if you raise your hand. All right. So what I'm going to show you here is some strength exercises that I like, and these are just a snippet of good strength exercises. My whole point is to, if you're one of those that might just do that little circuit of machines and not do anything very dynamic through full range of motion, 3D, maybe some of these would be a good thing to mix in at least. But if you're one of those that, for injury reasons, or you just don't want to do any of this, don't let me scare you away from just machines, because that's certainly better than nothing. I'm not saying that, but I'm just trying to show you all some new ideas. So this first one here is called a single leg deadlift. So we talked earlier about having balance, and having balance on a flat surface. Unless you're training for skiing or snowboarding, you wouldn't necessarily want to be on an unstable surface. So I really like this for balancing on what most of us are all on, which is the flat ground. So single leg, I'll show you from the side, is basically on one leg. And if balancing on one leg alone by itself is challenging, that might be good. Or modify with a chair and stabilize. If you're ready for the advanced version, you just are going to counterbalance your leg back and your upper body forward. And I like to look at one spot on the floor so I don't fall. What I'm doing, I'll show you from the side, is I'm using my hamstring. It doesn't look like it's working. The hamstring, big muscle in the back of the leg. It doesn't look like it's doing much, but I'm actually stretching it quite a bit on the way down, and I'm pushing my heel through the floor, driving my body up and through. So the counterpart to this on a machine would be a seated leg curl. So for example, that's that machine where you sit down and you have your legs up and you go, one plane of motion, not very functional, no balance involved, training it in one plane, and again, not really very good for the knee. Not going to apply to anything that we do in real life, unless, does anybody have anything in real life where you just do this? No. I think I'm getting that point through though. Functional strength training, right? Stuff that you do in real life we want to do in our training. So that's a single leg deadlift. Lateral lunge, multiplanar lunge, and lunge with rotation. Let me show you a lateral lunge. And this was born actually from my own mistakes. So I was one of those guys, I trained with free weights with my body weight, and I thought I was doing really good, but I always trained in one plane. I'd always just do static lunges like this. And it's a great exercise. But what happened was I was developing my quadriceps and my glutes and my adductor muscles all kind of in one plane. And so when I went out to play a sport, I was in trouble. I actually got chronic adductor syndrome, these big muscles on the inside of the leg, because I got really strong here, doing squats and lunges and all that stuff. But I never did enough stuff through the planes of motion. So a lateral lunge would be just taking that same lunge, keeping your upper body square, stepping out, and coming out like so. Same thing, kind of like our side squat too.
Is there any difference between that and a side squat?
No,
yeah,
same the side squat with hugging the tree. Yep. And a multiplanar lunge, you can use resistance if you want, but instead of just staying in that plane like I showed you, you can pick an angle. Say it's a 45-degree angle, and you can step out and then back in. Y'all see how that's a little bit more dynamic. So again, if you're somebody that moves in 3D like we all do, we should consider not just one plane lunges, but that multiplanar lunge as well.
How far should you step out?
Thank you, good question. 90 degrees is our favorite angle in fitness. So you're trying to achieve 90 degrees through your joint axis almost all the time. So when you step out, when you go down, you should be achieving that 90-degree angle through your knee joint. And a good way to remember is just keeping your knee right over your ankle. Let me give you a bad example. If I didn't take a big enough step, like this, see how that's a really acute angle there? You don't want that. You want to have a nice big step so that knee stays out of the angle. And that takes practice. It's not going to be perfect right at first. And then the last one, I like this one especially with any sport where you have rotation. Tennis, baseball, my favorite sport that I'm really bad at, golf. So lunge with rotation. You guys can try these too. I'm sorry, I'm just talking at you. If you want to get up and try these, please do. So lunge with rotation could be in one plane, and then you rotate and alternate sides. Or you can make a multiplanar and then rotate. I mean, it's endless what you can try. All right? Plank alternating arm and leg modification, and exploding modification. The planks you can do, you have no equipment required. You can get a little mat, workout mat for about 20 bucks. A plank, I'll show you from the side to the camera and then you'll in a second. What you're trying to do is support your body with your core. A quick question. What's the core?
All the abdominals and everything right here. That's the core.
It is. And that's kind of what most folks think is it is the abdomen. But the core is the lower back, mid back, upper back. Basically, it's everything above the waist and everything below the neck without your arms. That's your core. So when you train your core, when you train your abs, I should say, you also want to train your lower back. That's your core. We want to train everything here. What happens a lot of times, since abs are for some reason really trendy in fitness and working out, I got to get the best abs, blah, blah, blah. But then we ignore the lower back, muscular structure starts to pull forward, hips move back, and then we start to have lower back injuries. So if we're going to train our abdomen, we've got to train our lower back too. Why is the plank great? Because it does both at the same time. So what you do is you go on your forearms, favorite angle in fitness, 90 degrees. And then we keep our rear end. I've got a big rear end, so it's hard for me, but you try to keep that below the shoulders there. You can also do a plank, basically the same thing, in a push-up position. It's called a yoga plank. And then an advanced version of that is to pick up one leg. And then a further advancement is opposite arm and opposite leg. That gets really interesting because when I raise my foot off the ground, when I raise my arm off the ground, what has to activate? Core. And when you start to add rotation, because you're trying to keep yourself from falling in either direction, so that's really dynamic. That's really functional strength. So, is that better than the ab crunch machine? You bet. You bet. There's an exercise up there. I'm going to skip to it on that point called the bicycle. I bet you all have seen this before. That's this one. Hands don't go behind the head, first of all. Just on the side. What happens if you put your hands behind your head?
Neck strain.
Yeah. Yeah, get tired and you end up cranking on that neck with your upper body. So just relax those fingers on your temple. And then you're going to extend one leg, bring one leg in, opposite elbow, go toward your opposite knee. I don't care if you get all the way to your knee, if you're just throwing your elbow over there. How much ab work is this? That's nothing. So you want to turn your torso, even if you can't get there, turn your torso. As close as you can get. Even here is better than just going like that. So that's a bicycle. Reason I'm talking about that, they did a study. American Council of Exercise did a study on ab exercise. And they did y'all see that shocker that was out for a little while that shocked your abs? I mean, I can't even go into why that's bad. But anyways. And they had some different ab equipment, like the crunching machine and that little ab cruncher where you lay on your back. They had the bicycle and a couple of other full body or body weight exercises. And guess what was the best? The bicycle that requires no equipment that you can do at home with nothing was laying on your ground. That was one of the best exercises you can do. So, and it makes sense. I mean, you're moving your legs, so your lower abdomen is engaged. You're rotating, so your external obliques are engaged. And then you're crunching up, so your upper abdomen is engaged. So it's about as good as it gets. Okay. So, the only one I didn't show you on the plank was an explosive modification. I am way over on time already, you guys. I'm so sorry. I will speed through the rest here. Explosive modification on plank is this. So you're just moving off the ground, and that's applicable if you're playing a sport or doing some sort of activity where you need to be explosive like that. So I'm going to zoom through the rest here just so y'all can see it. And I'm sorry, I'm running over on time. This is called a band cuff. We already talked about how we move in 3 dimensions, right? So this is a great way to add resistance when you do that. Step into the band cuff. These are about 15 bucks. This black one is a really high intensity one. They make all sorts of different intensities. So what you do is you step with your feet at hip width apart, and you're going to move through any direction that you like. What muscle is this training? Yep, external rotators. right here. And you wouldn't guess it necessarily just by looking at it, but it is fantastic. But you don't have to stick with that. You can move forward and back in any direction you want. You can even work your hip flexors here, which are actually kind of hard to target with most equipment. Just balance and stand. So that's the band cuff. You can be explosive. You can train for sports like this and resist against it. So there's lots of cool stuff you can do with that. You can even do resistance bicycles with it. So lots of things to do there. Superman, we talked earlier about how it's important to train your lower back, part of the core. So we did our bicycles earlier. Superman, you're basically just going to lay on the ground. Relax your neck, that's key. We don't want to extend the neck. Just look down at the floor. Raise your arms and legs at the same time. Excuse me, it doesn't look like much, but you really engage the lower back a lot there. But again, don't extend your head up. You want to just relax that neck, activate the lower back and raise. Okay. I already showed you the Bosu surfer drill. So that's, not too many places to surf in Kansas. I just like that exercise, so I wanted to show you. The plyo push-up and then the Bosu plyo push-up. So here you can start out just in a regular push-up. You can add simple plyometric to add a little bit of explosiveness. More challenging is the clap. And we'll see if I can do it. Oh, just one. So that's the fun plyo Bosu push-up. So that's a good way to add upper body explosiveness here. These are a list of more suggested strength exercises. I won't go through those right now since we're low on time. But the key concept is minimizing equipment, using your body, go through the 3D effect.